WWF and WWE Unforgiven was an event that spanned 11 yearly entries from 1998, where it started as an in-your-house subtitle, to 2008, being replaced by the one-off event WWE Breaking Point in 2009. We're going to take a look at the many stages, rings, graphics, and broadcast elements that made up each and every Unforgiven event. This is Arena Showcase. The first event in the series would appear as Unforgiven in Your House and would take place on April 26, 1998, with 21,247 fans packing the Greensboro Coliseum complex in Greensboro, North Carolina. The show's sponsor, 10321, appears here in the opening. And for those of you born after the 90s, you'll probably have to Google that sponsor if you want to know more about them. The logo builds into the picture in a dark, gothic font lined with red before oozing away into the chocolate bar below. The design here would make up most of the graphics package for the night, featuring lots of sharp angles, gradient color blends, and white font. Names for commentary feature a nearly identical design, with only one of the shapes removed. This show contains a recap of Raw is War, which features that legendary botched WWF logo under the Titantron that only appeared for that one episode. Over at the matchup screen, there's quite the colorful background, incorporating red, orange, blue, and purple. There's really a lot going on here overall. The same background is used for replays, but it looks a lot cleaner here without all of the added text and wrestler cutouts. We see replays on the larger window to the left while the live feed keeps rolling to the right. And I like the slight curvature they added to the windows here. It makes them appear as real CRT television screens, which would have been the norm at the time. Now, I love me some WWF blimp, but I think it's safe to say that this one's looking a bit out of place by this time. The Attitude Era was filled with lots of red and black, while this new generation design of blue, yellow, and white hovers up above, out of place. They even covered the giant outdated WWF logo with a sponsorship banner. And side note, I always wanted this DX shirt when I was a kid. I like how it featured a big pop of red, while almost all the other shirts during this time and even afterwards feature the typical DX green on them. Our first shot of the stage for the night is after the opening package rolls and the pyro ignites, and this is a reminder of how small the WWF's stages were during this time. I mean, it's completely engulfed by the pyro, which in itself isn't that big and on the floor level. But let's take a closer look. Now, upon first inspection, it really kind of looks like this thing was plucked from the bottom of a swamp. Again, these stage designs were much smaller at the time, and they had to be innovative to make them unique, so they would do things like draping them in moss. I do, however, really like the unconventional angles and the custom event plaque up here. These were always really cool to see during this era. I love signage like this. This is also during the time where seating was still utilized behind the entry areas, something that was phased out in exchange for larger and more grand set designs. Down on the floor, we see all sorts of colored lights and even what appears to be an emergency-style light, but I can't tell for sure. And what's with like the trash and exposed cables everywhere? Off to the side, we'd see an elevated stage, which would primarily be utilized for the Sawyer Brown concert with a special guest performance by Jeff Jarrett. Later on in the night, the stage would be used for other festivities, such as shoving Paul Bearer's head into a kick drum. Backstage, we see the Hotline booth, also featuring a slightly dated look with lots of purple, teal, yellow, and other early 90s aesthetic. Meanwhile, other backstage interviews are conducted in front of a very Attitude Era looking set, complete with a metallic wall and event plaque hanging in the background. Such a stark contrast between these two areas. You can tell they were still in that transition phase. Up above the ring area, we see the cage that Chyna would be locked into later in the evening, and of course the WWF scratch logo banners are hung high above as well. We even get a cool cage cam, which really gives us a good perspective of how little space the ringside padding actually covers. This, of course, is that 90s era of padding that was much thinner than what the promotion would later implement. Black aprons surround the ring with WWF logos on the aisle side as well as the commentary table side, while the words World Wrestling Federation stretch across the front and back sides of the ring. Red ropes run through the black turnbuckle pads, which still feature the classic WWF logos, and black posts and steps finish off the design. This event would also feature the Inferno match, which is quite the visual spectacle in itself. With the lights down low and the flames surrounding the ring, it's really unlike anything that we'd seen at the time. The second annual Unforgiven would hit the Charlotte Coliseum in Charlotte, North Carolina on September 26, 1999, with 15,779 fans in attendance. It was fairly common during this time for pay-per-view opening packages to feature recap clips from other shows and events, but I always appreciated when the promotion would use unique footage like we see here, clearly shot for promotional use for things like commercials and Titantron videos and things of this nature. It just comes off as very high quality and cinematic. We then see the event logo build into the shot with a very simple backdrop and the less commonly used black WWF scratch logo. We also see a new font used here. Well, I guess technically two new fonts, as one is stacked over the other. We would see this dark graphics package used for the night with a brown background, event logo, and names appearing in white for wrestlers and commentary introductions. Other overlays would follow suit with this design, while the matchup screens would use a slightly different logo variation accompanied by these lens flare effects. Replays feature a similar look and, just my opinion, but would look a lot cleaner without that large logo towards the bottom, but what do I know? The opening pyro is quite the upgrade over the previous year, and the larger entry set design probably comes into play for that. I'm happy to see the inclusion of a Titantron here for '99, hung quite a ways up above a circular Minitron that cycles between the WWF and Unforgiven logos. This is another design positioned directly onto the floor of the arena, as many pay-per-views were at the time, and features these giant tubes running down the aisle with lights positioned at the base of each structure. It's very dark, very industrial, and this was sort of the standard during this time for the WWF. Backstage we see the same set that was used in 1998, though there seems to be no current event logo present, making it appear quite bare and almost unfinished. We do see some locker room footage here, and it's apparent that the Hornets played here in this venue during this time, just judging by the color scheme. We see a lot of the same items here making up the ring and ring area, such as the ropes, aprons, and whatnot, but we do see the new WWF scratch logo appear on the turnbuckle pads here, and that old foldable high school gymnastics padding has been replaced with the thicker and more durable stuff. They've also upgraded the steel ringside barriers to the thick padded ones we all know and love today. Now, I'm not sure if many of you remember the Kennel from Hell match, but if you don't, that's great news. That one took place here and is essentially a cage match with a Hell in a Cell around it. Now, I'm not sure why they decided to use the old big blue cage here, because it had since been replaced with the fence-style version. Maybe it was to avoid 2 layers of fencing that the cameras had to peer through, or some other valid reason, but either way, it looks really out of place here, and it just doesn't belong. The city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, would host Unforgiven on September 24, 2000. 19,315 fans would pack the First Union Center. Look at this logo in all of its 2000 glory. It sort of reminds me of that late-era Nitro opening. Terribly fantastic. This one's got layers of tribal, fire, and of course a sharp letter design to finish things off. Things look a bit streamlined though once the event kicks off with this golden black aesthetic. The same format would be used for wrestler names as they make their way down to the ring, as well as commentary, with no design difference between them. Matchup screens are a similar design, though a bit more intricate, accompanied by a larger event logo in the background, and this darker shade of turquoise, which oddly enough actually works. This is used over on the replay screen as well, and that's really it. No turquoise anywhere else here tonight. Sort of weird how they just threw it in here for these 2 screens. The pyro is lit and the stage is revealed, and boy, oh boy, now we're starting to encroach on those glory years of set designs. I mean, we can really see the evolution taking place here with this dual Titantron design. I guess technically the one on the right is a Minitron based on its default logo display, but nevertheless I love the symmetry here. Down below we see sheet metal walls with a shadow boxed WWF logo in the center and a really large version of the event logo hanging up top. It's still quite a bit dark, but that sort of adds to this one's cool atmosphere. Backstage, that metallic wall is back again for the third time, and returning is the event signage, thankfully, which looks really cool with this lighting they're doing here. So I'm familiar with RC Cola, but I had to Google RC Edge because I just really didn't remember that version of it, and apparently it was a variation that was loaded with extra caffeine and only lasted from 1999 to 2000. So I guess this sponsorship deal didn't do them too many favors. I was actually surprised to see that the generic aprons were used here in late 2000, as I was convinced that by this time all pay-per-view events had brand-specific theming on the rings, but that isn't the case, and so we see the same area here as we did for 99. September 23, 2001 would mark the 4th annual Unforgiven pay-per-view, hitting Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the Mellon Arena to be exact. Is it Mellon or Mellon? With 13,855 attendees. And yes, this is the one with that nightmare-inducing Austin poster. We see the tagline, "The greatest of battles are fought from within." This, of course, is part of the opening sequence as well, as this mutated triple Austin head forms into the background, while the Unforgiven logo appears front and center. This is the same base design as last year, with a slightly different color scheme and texture used for the font, and of course we no longer see the Nitro-style tribal and fire all over the place here on this one. The color scheme is seen for the overlays as well, with this design that sort of resembles an arrow and black font. Lower thirds get the same treatment, and due to the invasion angle going on during this time, we see a wrestler's represented brand appear over to the left. Sort of confusing though at times, because if they represent WWF but say hold a WCW title, both logos appear. It's kind of messy. These logos also appear on matchup screens, with wwf.unforgiven.com displayed at the bottom, finished off with orange backgrounds. Over at the replay screen, we see the event logo in white, which looks pretty nice over this background, given what the background is, of course. I'm sort of surprised they brought back the tubes. I mean, it's not a bad look, but I think the previous design was a bit nicer. We see the dual rectangular screens return, this year with one that's clearly larger, and a rather tall oval screen in the center stretching from the stage floor up to the curved lighting structure atop. Oh, and as you can see, this is the first elevated setup in the series thus far, with a ramp heading down to the ring area. I missed the sign for the event logo. I mean, I know that they were sort of phasing those out during the time in favor of the Minitron capabilities, but that really added to the overall appearance. And well, you know, the sign may have not been used for the entry set, but it is here backstage, and looks mighty nice if you ask me. Alright, if I was surprised last year at the aprons, now I'm really surprised, because I know for sure by late 2001 they weren't still using these generic house show aprons for pay-per-view events. I mean, clearly they were because it's here, but I don't remember this at all. The sides facing the stage and the commentary tables now feature the WWF.com aprons, and we do see the move from red to black ropes, so there has been some change over the previous events. The Staples Center in Los Angeles would host the 2002 Unforgiven, taking place on September 22nd with 16,000 fans in attendance. The tagline for this one is, "The next big thing has arrived." And of course, it's Brock Lesnar. New year, new name, new logo for the company. Honestly, quite the upgrade for the opening visuals. I mean, this one looks better than the rest by a mile, but more importantly, the new event logo. This one features a more simple design with all uppercase uniform letters, and I'm pretty sure we see this one for the remainder of the event series. We'll find out. This looks pretty darn nice as well, if I might say so, with this industrial steel-like design. This is used for lower thirds as well, with the Unforgiven logo appearing in sort of a shadow in the background. And despite additional information appearing up top in smaller white font, this design would remain the same between wrestlers and commentators. Graphics for matchups are put together very nicely, featuring white font and varying background colors depending on the wrestlers. Replay screens are similar, though I'm a bit confused on what's happening up here to the left with this red. It appears to be maybe bodily fluid splattered? I don't know. Backstage, we see these curved steel structures. I'll always remember that video of Brock Lesnar curling these things, with a monitor mounted on them and a curtain in the backdrop with some red lighting finishing off the set. And massive set usually equals massive opening pyro, and this is definitely the biggest thus far, from a height standpoint at least. I mean, look at Brock standing in front of the letters here. It really gives you a great perspective of how big everything is. And I have to say, I love this feature here with the negative space logo down below. We see a Titantron up high with lots of steel surrounding it and plenty of lighting. Gone are the days of barely lit arenas. As you can clearly see here, things are getting brighter. We can also see that the Raw commentary table has been moved to the side of the entry area on a slightly elevated platform. They're really trying their hardest not to give us an Unforgiven branded apron, aren't they? Because it's now 2002 and we have not seen one yet. I mean, this is what was used for house shows. We do see the WWE.com aprons for the opposite sides of the ring, and look at that. Red Ropes took a 1-year hiatus and they're back. New for 2002 are the updated WWE branded turnbuckle pads. The 21st of September would mark the 2003 Unforgiven event with 10,347 fans hitting the Giant Center in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Is that right? The Giant Center? Face your fear would be the tagline for this one. This is kind of a weird opening, in my personal opinion, with these production truck interior renders. I don't really understand the context behind this, if there's any at all. Maybe there's not. I don't know. The logo is much like what we saw last year, at least the core design of it is, with white font and a monochrome WWF logo. White font is used for overlays with this hectic looking red design included for just about everything. We see it here for the wrestler introductions as well as for commentary, and even a variation of this for other graphic backgrounds. Matchup screens feature the Unforgiven logo in red, most likely to add some contrast. The opening pyro here it's top-notch, really. It's grand, it's bright, and we get flames within the Unforgiven logo at the base of the entry area. And seriously, this thing is just awesome. It's still burning as the first match begins. It looks incredible. This design features a center position Titantron with the additional Minitrons to the left and right, seated a bit further back. This adds a nice level of dimension, and I can always appreciate these little subtle yet effective design choices. The entire set is finished off with this metallic look and a lighted WWE logo up top. We see commentary tables elevated to the sides with steel lighting structures. And at first glance, these might look a little bit out of place, but it'll make a bit more sense later in the night as we see Shane McMahon climb to the top and crash land down below. Backstage, we see this unique design, going back to the traditional signage, mounted onto a metallic backdrop. That design used for the graphics package is actually seen here at the ring for the front and rear aprons where, ta-da, we see Unforgiven logos. This one looks quite nice with the red ropes in my opinion. We see the opposite sides with the WWE.com branding and lots of black elsewhere in the ring area. For 2004, Unforgiven would head up to the Pacific Northwest, hitting the Rose Garden in Portland, Oregon on September 12th with 10,000 fans in attendance. The tagline for the event, insane, pain, Kane. I mean, they really could have kept it going. Rain, drain, bane, sustain, butane, polyurethane. Just saying. We see a very similar opening here with the logo design returning from the previous few years. Lower thirds are a bit simple this year, white font with a blue glow over a backdrop that resembles maybe a steel beam. It's definitely industrial looking, that's for sure. And though the promotion commonly features some sort of logo here, we see that this year there's nothing. We do see the Unforgiven logo here for matchup screens, appearing here in this cool perspective view with a larger version being used for the background. Replays give us a little something different, though similar in a way when it comes to theming. We'll head backstage first, where we see this setup, complete with event signage and a pinkish glow projected from lighting. This set is pretty massive and super interesting. We see multiple screens made up into these quadrilateral shapes, with the upper two displaying Titantron videos and the bottom two showing additional displays such as the event logo and the matchups as they take place. They've once again incorporated that Unforgiven set piece into the lower section of this design, but sadly it does not get set ablaze as it did last year. Over at the ring, we've got red ropes once again, with a new apron design for the front and rear, featuring that white logo that we've seen on the promotional posters for a few years now. There's also this long video screen up here displaying the event logo. The Ford Center in Oklahoma City would host the 2005 Unforgiven pay-per-view, with only 8,000 attending the event on September 18th. The opening here is filled with all sorts of metallic objects, which by now has kind of become the norm for this era, and dare I say, this one is sort of steampunkish? I mean, I don't really know what classifies something as steampunk, so maybe I'm wrong here. Does it have to actually feature steam? Either way, the white logo returns here and is by far the most used design in the event's history by this point. So this is sort of unique here. The overlay designs used for names feature this faint gray design behind a sturdy looking white font, but we also see a semi-transparent Unforgiven logo crawling up the left side of the screen. This is also seen for commentary introductions. Matchup graphics now feature multiple screens, as each participant is shown individually before joining up together in harmony. They've used this sort of sloppy cutout effect for the wrestlers, which looks sort of terrible in certain shots, I'm not gonna lie. Replays feature a bright background loaded with lights as well as the Unforgiven logo. Backstage, we see the logo from the opening graphics used here for signage, hanging from a metal structure with some pretty cool lighting effects. The stage might look identical to last year's at first glance, though there are some slight differences with the screens. We see two Minitron screens up top with a center-mounted Titantron and two more lower screens displaying matchups. Once again returning, we see the lower portion from the last few sets, which is a welcome sight for those of us that appreciate the more traditional non-screen props. Because as we can see at this point what direction the promotion is heading towards, with 5 rather large screens making up the majority of this design. A little glimpse into the future. Heading down to the ring, this would be the same design from last year, right down to the Unforgiven and WWE.com logos on the aprons, to the video screen used overhead to display the event logo. We'd see quite the jump in fan attendance for 2006, with 16,105 fans hitting the Air Canada Centre in Toronto on September 17th. This year's opening features this gold color scheme as the returning logo builds over a gray-mounted plate in what sort of looks like one of those early 2000s sci-fi desktop wallpaper designs. I like the way they incorporated this design into the graphic overlays as seen here, and also for lower thirds. There's sort of this shattered earth design going on, with the Unforgiven logo off to the left in a goldish glow. The same design is used for both wrestlers and commentators. Matchup screens are similar to the opening as well, but don't feature that cool effect seen for the other graphics. And the replay screens are just wild. I mean, there's really a lot going on back there, with even some shades of purple and pink coming through. We saw the TV screen set up backstage a few years back, but haven't seen it since. Well, it returns here with sort of a curtained off area immediately behind it. Now, I'm actually super impressed with this stage design, as though it does feature quite a bit of screens, there's a healthy amount of other materials used here to balance out the design. Taking a look at the lower section, we'd see this glorious set piece return once again, thankfully, making it a tradition at this point for the stage area, and it's accompanied by this cool sheet metal design entry behind it. New ring aprons here, featuring this year's color scheme, and other than the cell hanging above the ring, we really don't see any noteworthy changes for 2006. On September 16, 2007, the 10th annual Unforgiven pay-per-view event would take place at the FedEx Forum in Memphis, Tennessee, with 12,000 attendees. We see a much darker opening here, with everything building into a gray, possibly smoky or foggy background as the Undertaker's logo appears behind the returning Unforgiven design. Probably one of my favorites up to this point. This simple yet creative design would be used for graphic overlays featuring black, purple, and white. For wrestler and commentary introductions, we see these purple designs on the sides, which add a bit of dimension here. Screens for match previews are super clean and clear here with animated backgrounds. Replay screens, for the most part, have remained the same for most of the events, with the logo up to the right, the staggered window layout. It's sort of a set format, but the background here does incorporate this year's purple color scheme. Backstage, we see good old-fashioned signage return here. They've really gone back and forth on this, haven't they? This black structure in the background is a nice new touch, however. If you liked last year's stage design, well, you're in luck. Though I have to say there's something odd I didn't notice while capturing my screenshots for this one, but in most shots you can see the Unforgiven signage down here towards the floor area, while in this shot here it's elevated right under the Titantron, which in itself appears to be much higher as well. This was right before Taker's entrance, which was pretty spectacular and used some special props, so obviously that's the reason, but I'm only noticing this detail now. I'm not sure how I missed it before. Either way, while I typically don't appreciate repetitive set designs, this one is one that's done well, and I really can't complain that I'm seeing it for a second time. At the ring, we see the return to black ropes, as this event has gone from a Raw branded event to now including SmackDown and ECW as well. The purple designed aprons look great here on the front and back sides of the ring, and of course we see the WWE.com designs for the sides facing the aisle and commentators. And just something random that stuck out to me was this Triple H attire. I don't think I ever recall seeing this design. I really wasn't watching the product much at this point, so it's possibly that he wore these every night and I just totally missed it. The finale, the final, the last Unforgiven would take place on September 7th, 2008 from the Quickens Loan Arena in Cleveland, Ohio, with an attendance of just 8,707. We see an opening here, which is a bit of a mix between the last few, throwing that industrial-like logo into a dark cloudy sky with lightning, and of course that touch of purple returns here. This would mark the first year of HD for the WWE, and with that we would see a lot of new graphics packages, many which incorporate multiple areas of the screen, such as what we see here. Lower thirds stretch from end to end with lots of steel and diamond plate finish. Lightning is incorporated into the background and names appear in white, with the event logo to the left. This design is altered slightly for commentators, ditching the logo altogether. Replay screens are filled with diamond plate and lightning, and really that's all we can ask for. I mean, this is elite stuff right here. Other graphics throughout the show utilize the same basic design. Now this is 2008. This is the HD era of set design, so you sort of know what to expect here. Lots of LED stuff with an offset Titantron, which I will say is a bit of a throwback in a way with that steel lighting structure framing around it. Reminds me of the old Attitude era Titantron, but obviously not as cool. I never liked these offset stages too much where the Titantron isn't centered, especially if there isn't an appropriate balance of something else on the opposite side. Now they did bring back the classic Unforgiven sign that is so near and dear to my heart, but they placed it way up here. I get that it looks out of place compared to the new style with all the LED and everything, but it looks even weirder just kind of thrown all the way at the top. We see a TV setup backstage with the curtain or tarp or whatever it is draped up behind it, and this cool looking WWE logo hanging over here out of frame for some reason. They should have used this. Or maybe they did somewhere else in the night and I just didn't come across it. With the return of the purple color scheme, we see the Unforgiven aprons from last year come back as well. Though there are some other changes down here, like these new WWE.com aprons for the side with super extra large lettering, so you can see it all the way from the cheap seats. Silver steps and ring posts and purple ropes are also new. And that's Unforgiven, an event that ran for quite some time during some of the best years of the promotion, in my opinion. Except for the end there. What was your favorite stage, or ring, or graphics? Pick one, pick them all. Let me know, because I truly love to hear about this stuff. And let me know if there's another pay-per-view event you'd like to see covered here. For now, I'm out of here, and I hope to see you back here for the next one.